I'm so excited to have Dr. Rose Schlaff on the Awaken Feminine podcast today. I can't get my words out today, but that's okay. Dr. Rose is a sex intimacy coach, pelvic floor physical therapist, and founder of Be Well with Rose. And I know she has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. Welcome, Rose. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. And if it was perfect, it would be boring. So
Yeah.
it's always fun to have little human moments. Who
Yes.
need perfect words, right? I certainly don't have them.
Exactly. And yeah, I love it when my words don't come out. So anyway, that's how it is.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna do it too. I'm doing it now.
So, Rose, before we jump in and find out more about you, would you mind sharing with us what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
Such a beautiful question, Kathy. So for me, awakened feminine and a part of my journey is basically anyone who can really connect deeply to their innermost desires, needs, voice. I think anyone who grew up socialized as a woman, it can oftentimes come into the situation that I came into, which was basically I got really, really, really good at meeting other people's needs, identifying what other people wanted, having deep empathy for others, which was such a beautiful skill and is such a beautiful skill that I cherish of mine. However, I think a lot of the time we can be so good at that skill that it's hard to shine our spotlight in on ourselves and ask, what do I want? What do I need? And for me, in my own awakening, that was a big part of my journey. And so my definition of an awakened feminine is someone who can not only hear their inner voice, their inner desires, their inner wants, their inner needs, but can also ask for it confidently and set boundaries around those wants, needs, desires. And that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. Wow, that is such an awesome definition. So beautiful, so well said. And I totally agree. It's having that confidence. For women, it's so hard. It's so hard to find that confidence to say what we want. Just like you said, we've just been brought up to put everyone else first. And I think we share a similar story in that, very empathetic, very good at finding out what others need, but then putting our needs at the back, the back until everyone else is fulfilled first.
Absolutely. And it can actually divorce us from our own compass of pleasure of what actually feels good to us. What do we actually want? And it can kind of make it foggy to see that in ourselves. It's if you've ever gone to dinner with a friend and been like, oh yeah, I'll eat anything. And they say pizza and you're like, oh, I really wanted sushi.
You're like, darn it.
You didn't say it because you didn't realize until they said pizza. And you're like, well, I already said I'd eat anything. So I guess I'm eating pizza. It's like that difference in that moment of, I don't know, let me just take a minute and reflect and see what would sound really delicious to me. And oh, actually it's sushi. I didn't realize, but I took that moment and now it's sushi. Are you interested in sushi? Right?
Yeah. It's sounds like conversations I have with my husband. Like, what do you want to eat? Why don't you choose? And then he'll say something like, no, I don't want that. Oh, I love it. Rose, can you share with us where you're joining us from?
Yes. So I am here in sunny Southern California in San Diego.
Oh, nice. Very nice. And please, we're going to dive into your journey now. I want you to tell us, who you are and why you do what you do, which is the, sex and intimacy coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So who I am. So yeah, basically I started my journey as a pelvic floor physical therapist. So always growing up, I was that friend who people would come to me and say oh God, I haven't talked to anyone about this, or I have this embarrassing rash. What do you think about it? The things that people don't talk about. I was always that one friend that people told their stuff to. And I found it to be a superpower of mine, making people feel comfortable and safe and unweird with the weird little sensitivities of life, of the moments where we feel completely alone, completely like, oh my gosh, what is actually going on in my body, in my head, in my heart? And I took that superpower and I became a pelvic floor physio. So we basically talk all day long about pee, poop, sex, all the things that are untalkaboutable.
Yeah.
And I loved my job. I really loved it. I was working with a lot of people during pregnancy and postpartum. I was in an incredible facility where there was a sexual medicine physician who was a fellowship trained urologist. There's a sex therapist. There were multiple pelvic floor physios there, and it was incredible to see all the different aspects that impact sexual wellness. This thing that we really don't talk about. And it was interesting because even though I was so deeply rooted in the medical treatment and the multifaceted medical treatment of wellness, I actually was struggling with my health a lot at the beginning of my career. And I began having panic attacks where I had never had any issues with anxiety before. And I was having heart palpitations and food sensitivities and all these weird body symptoms where it just felt like I was in complete like white knuckling through my day. I felt completely out of control of my body. And you and I, before we started recording, were laughing about my little physio nerd self. And I was a total nerd for the human body. Like I had just spent years and years and years studying like every nerve, every muscle, every part of the human body. And I felt like I really understood it. And when I started struggling with my health, I went to the doctor and lo and behold, they did find a hormonal imbalance. So my little body nerd self was like, oh, good. There's a hormonal imbalance. We can check this off the box. There's a path to get better. And after a year of working with that endocrinologist, I remember being in the office and getting the news that my numbers were completely normal. And although this should have been great news, it actually felt like a punch in the gut for me because I didn't feel normal. I didn't feel normal at all. I still felt in complete disconnection with my body, completely out of control of my body, wasn't quite sure how it was going to act, what it needed. And when I kind of reached the metaphorical end of the line with the medical system, I was like, now what? Like if my physiology is perfect, normal, optimal in the eyes of this endocrinologist, how can I remedy what I'm experiencing? And I went on a deep journey to find what was next. And I just fell into coaching. I actually wasn't looking for it. I was looking to learn more about functional nutrition. Yeah. I was like, well, functional nutrition is going to fix me. And the person who put together this program was really smart because the first 60% of the program was all coaching. And what I found in there were so many layers of behaviors that I was doing in my day-to-day life, so many societal shoulds and patriarchal BS that was impacting my mental and physical health. All these emotions that were unprocessed living in my body that I really just didn't know how to process, that they were chilling there. Quiet muscle, I know how to stretch it, but sadness deeply rooted in my physical form. Oh, don't know much about that. Right. And it was a big journey. I really found that the deeper I dove into this work, the better I felt physically, the more grounded I felt in my energy. I wasn't as drained at the end of the day. And when I started using some of these strategies with the people I was helping in my physical therapy clinic, people who were having trouble reaching orgasm, who were having pain or discomfort during sex, who were going through pregnancy or postpartum and really feeling completely at odds with their body, my clients started having much better outcomes too.
Wow.
And I realized that I was really only like scratching the surface prior to that. I was like, wow, I was doing exactly what that endocrinologist did to me, saying like, all right, congratulations, you're physically great. Like your pelvic floor muscles look good. Go have some sex with your partner. And they were like, what? What are you talking about?
But I'm suffering trauma.
There's so much more. And God, my facility was set up so beautifully too, because we had that sex therapist, we had the doctor, but there's just always more. There's always more pieces we can put together. The holistic management can just be that much deeper. And what I found was I was really craving a space where I could support people, not just with the physiology of sexual wellness and desire, but also with the emotional component, the relationship dynamics, the behavioral dynamics, and really addressing the culture in which we were raised in. Like the messages we get about how it is acceptable to be as a woman, how it is acceptable to be as a mother, how it is acceptable to be as a wife, and dispel some of those myths, because so many of those voices are stuck in our heads and we don't even really know. Like we don't even consciously know. So that's how I got to where I am, which my all-time passion is basically helping women and queer folks who are just complete badasses in the rest of their life. Like they're going through their to-do list, they're high achieving in business and in their job. They have great relationships, great friendships, great family dynamics, but they get to the end of their day and sex just feels like this drain on their relationship, on their being. And they feel like they're having to make this impossible choice between me time or we time. And just feeling like, oh my God, sex is becoming just one more thing on my to-do list. And it doesn't feel like this fun, exciting thing that connects me further with my partner. And what I have found is in doing this work, regardless of how long you've been with your partner, regardless of how many kids you have, regardless of how high-powered your job is, there are such simple techniques that we can do in your daily life to make intimacy feel fun, feel easy, and actually energize you instead of drain you. And that is my mission, just to let every human who wants to feel that way know that there are tools to get there and give them those tools.
Wow. I love everything you shared. And I've got lots of questions. But that is just so cool, just your story about, I mean, I mentioned to you before we jumped on and hit record that I'm a pharmacist, and it's you're just raised up to, go logical. This is the science. This is how the body works. Yeah. There's nothing else but your, physical body. And then going, oh, actually, there's so much more. It's not just your body, it's your mind, it's your spirit, and how they all interconnect to really create, in your case, I mean, you help people with sex and intimacy, but really, even though you say that it's just that, when you fix the mind and the spirit as well, it fixes everything else as well. Because, yeah, they might have the high-powered job, but they might be hating it, but they're not saying it either. So like you said before, in your definition of what an awakened feminine is then nurturing your clients to really be able to express what they want. And that stems into the bedroom.
100%. And I really think like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I have worked with so many incredible people who have gone through massive professional development journeys, massive healing journeys, and have come to me kind of like, sex is this final frontier. Like I've been deep diving into positive psychology and yoga and wellness and nutrition. And this is the last piece of the puzzle where I don't quite feel an alignment. And once we get that, their whole entire life shifts, because it's the cherry on top to the work that they're doing. But it's also like, when we're ignoring this piece of us, this piece that's so easily ignored because it's a silent piece in our society, we're not getting the full package of the healing. There's a blind spot. And I have a client who is actually she's a trauma therapist herself. And I was just talking to her the other day, and she said, I am a better therapist after doing this work together. And it's because I am so grounded in my body in a much deeper way. Like she's like, she had been in trauma therapy for 3 years. She'd been doing all this amazing healing, but to address the sexual healing, the intimacy healing, it was just this new level of grounded presence that she could hold space for her clients. I was like, holy, are you saying that healing your sex life made you a better therapist?
Yeah.
She's like, it did. Surprisingly, I don't know how, but it did. It just works.
Yeah. And it's, I mentioned to you before that I'm always a bit shy when talking about sex, but I also know, like, doing with all the work that I do, that, your sacral center, which is, your sexual energy, that's where all your creativity comes in. That's where, you create and, you give birth and all that. So healing it makes, healing your sexual health, what you think about sex, it makes so much sense that it will make everything else in your life better, because you're allowing your body, your being, your spirit to, really unleash your creativity. So that's what I'm getting anyway.
I completely agree. That sacral, the creativity, the sexuality, the sensuality. And I think when people hear me talk about sex, they're like, oh, is this chick just saying to go have a bunch of sex? Like, God, that sounds exhausting. Right? It's not like the amount of sex you have at all. Like I actually have a lot of clients who come to me and end up having less sex, but sex that they're enjoying more, sex that energizes them, sex that feels on the same page, sex that doesn't feel like, all right, it's been a while, let me just talk myself into this, right? And so we're not talking about quantity, we're talking about quality. And that starts with your own relationship with your sensuality and your sexuality. And it's not all about penetration, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can get pleasure from a lot of things outside of penetration. Yeah,
yes,
definitely. For me, food is one of them.
Huge one. I was thinking of dancing.
Yeah,
like,
dancing
makes me feel sexier, like more embodied than just like dancing and looking at myself in the mirror and just like flirty dancing with myself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how often do we actually turn that energy on ourselves?
Yes, because it doesn't feel, I think, like you were saying, it's a societal bullshit that we've been programmed to believe. Can we talk a bit about that? What are some of the main blocks that you've seen in your clients that really blocks them from really being able to express themselves sexually and even in their daily lives?
So many. So I think that we first have to talk about how sex is portrayed in TV and media and movies. And really what that starts with is how women are portrayed in TV, media, and movies. Most of the time, what we see it's getting better. But at least when I was growing up, it was mostly skinny, straight, white, able-bodied women who all looked a very similar way. And when we see sex scenes in TV, movie, a lot of the time it's like 20 seconds of missionary penetration and then both people orgasm simultaneously. And, I have so many clients that come to me and are like, I'm a lot of work. It's hard for me to orgasm. It takes a long time. It's too much energy. I'm taking up too much space. And what I want to say to you is what we see on TV and media, first of all, There's so many different body types that are beautiful and are acceptable. So many different ways that you can look, life experiences that you can have that are beautiful and acceptable and worthy and of pleasure. And because we see this 1%, we think that we're less than. But what I want to let you know is your pleasure is worth taking up time and space. And the average amount of time it takes for someone to reach orgasm is far longer than 20 seconds. It can be between 30 and 45 minutes, right? And another thing is, I think in TV and movie and media, we just see people having sex without any type of toys, without any type of mobility issues, right? Like there's no pillow propping, like, oh, this position actually kind of hurts my back. Like, can we go over here? There's no lube, like there's nothing to help. And so you feel like, okay, if I need some of these things, if I need or want, maybe not even need, just want, maybe it makes it better to have lube on hand, to have pillows that are putting you in a certain position that make your body more comfortable, or a vibrator that makes it easier for you to experience pleasure during partnered sex. All of those things are acceptable. We're never seeing them. We're never seeing them on TV and movies. And another thing I want to dispel for women and vulva owners is only less than 1/3 of people with vaginas can reliably orgasm through penetration alone. Like the majority of people who have vaginas cannot. You need clitoral stimulation. So I have so many clients who feel like they're making their partner work hard, or they're taking too long, or there's something wrong with them. And I want you to know that however you experience pleasure, whatever sprinkles on top, added bonuses you need to help you, use that. It's like using a handheld toothbrush. I just got an electric toothbrush for the first time this year. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been talking about vibrators for 5 years and I've never had an electric toothbrush. What have I been doing? Like I've been brushing my teeth like a common peasant. No, I'm just kidding. But
love it.
It was so much work before. I'm like, this is so much easier. Why didn't I have an electric toothbrush sooner? And that's the same thing for pleasure. It's like, if you can have pleasure more easily, why wouldn't you invest in an electric toothbrush or whatever? So those are some big ones. And I'll say like purity culture and religion are really, really big ones too, that can really get in your head as to like, oh, a good woman doesn't want sex, or doesn't get turned on before marriage. And then as soon as you're married, you're supposed to flip this switch and become the sex goddess all of a sudden. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've never had any experiences with sex, let alone positive experiences, because I've always felt like it was the wrong thing to feel. And so that can be a big thing that I work with my clients to overcome, is some of those societal shoulds of, like, this is what I should be doing pre-marriage. This is what I should be doing post-marriage. This is how many times a week a good partner has sex, or this is how many times a week, we, whatever activity, this is what I should look like during sex. This is how my body should look. This is how my legs should be shaped. This is how I should be waxed. It's a big part of my work is, whatever you want, you get to have it. You don't have to look anyway, show up anyway, sound anyway. You don't have to sound anyway during sex.
Yep.
So just really undoing all the shoulds. They're deep in there, and there's a lot of different tools that we have to work through them. But those are a few examples.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking about women not taking up space, or they're too much work, all those things we carry into our normal daily lives as well.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, we're at work, or, we're with a partner. Oh, we shouldn't be taking up so much space. We shouldn't be such hard work. When really we need to be going, hey, I need this to experience pleasure.
Yes.
I need to take up space so that people can see how awesome I am. All those things that we don't do. I mean, men also, but, you know, especially in women, it's culturally, societally, how we are brought up. It's, just hearing that, I was like, wow, it translates straight back into the bedroom, doesn't it?
Yep. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And that's why this is oftentimes the final frontier, because you may be working on being, taking up more space in your work or in your relationship, or asking for, you know, like division of chore labor, or asking for your partner to get you food. There's all these things, all these ways that we're practicing outside the bedroom. But if we still have these sneaky unconscious narratives running around our head during sex, it's going to keep us stuck outside the bedroom too.
Yeah. And, you know, when you're talking about the media and how it's portrayed, I had a giggle in my head, because I remember when I had, you know, first time I had sex, I was like, well, that didn't look like that. That was like completely not like that. And what you were talking about, that you expect it to be this sex goddess, or, you know, to know exactly what you're doing, you know, in certain cultures where they don't have sex before they get married. It's just not even humanely possible to be to do that.
No, it's completely an unrealistic standard. It's like setting us up for failure.
Yeah, exactly. And lastly, I just loved how you said, you know, you see the women on TV, you know, what they look like. They're always skinny and, you know, beautiful, da, 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 da. And we were talking about this before we jumped on the podcast. And you know, when I first found out about you, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to be talking to Dr. Rose. And I'm not going to say your surname because I can't get it. And then I saw a picture of you, and, you know, it's that societal programming where I'm expecting someone that's, you know, when you think of someone that's talking about sex or, you know, sexual, you have a different image. And I'm like, oh, she's so sweet and so cute and gorgeous, and I'm going to be talking to her about sex. Oh, okay. You know, we were having a laugh because you're like, I'm a nerd. I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's just perfect to name that, because we think that, you know, being sexier or being connected to our sexuality is like this thing that's so outside of ourselves, or like, you know, those Burger King commercials where there's like a woman in like a bikini that's like wet, leaning over a car, eating a burger. And it's like, well, that's not me. That's not my jam. So like, am I not sexy? Am I not like connected to my sexual self? And I just think it's such a beautiful reminder that like being connected to yourself, connected to your sensuality, to your sexuality, it can look all different ways, and you can be a nerd, and you can look however, you know, there's no one way to do it. But I think until we start having these conversations, we just don't realize that's what our unconscious programming is saying. It runs around in the background. It's like having a bunch of apps open on our phone that we don't even realize till our phone slows down and we're like, oh my God, I have like 20 open apps that are totally draining my battery that I didn't even know were there, right? It's all these like unconscious stories draining our emotional battery.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. And I really don't know who actually eats a burger in the bikini and leaning over a car, but, you know, we get sold that and it seems quite normal. I have not actually seen someone in real life do that.
Just another example of how TV and media are not real life. They're just not.
Yeah. I want to ask you, what are some of the, maybe if you can maybe give us like a one tip of how we can like start overcoming all these bullshit stories that we've been sold or that we've been brought up to believe about sex, intimacy, looking sexy. You know, I had a conversation with my photographer recently, and she asked me to, you know, ask people what they think about me. It's just like, oh, just ask them 3 words what people think about you. And she goes, oh, I did that, and someone said sexy. I'm not sexy, she said. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're super sexy. And she's like, but is the thought of, she's supposed to, show her boobs, like you have them out in the open, but it's her presence. Her presence is sexy. Yeah. She's just this cool chick, right?
Yeah.
So what's a tip that you can give to our listeners that can help them overcome what they portray as sexy and really start connecting with themselves?
Such a beautiful question. I love that. And I think it starts with getting really clear on exactly how you want to feel. So I would say, like, really ground down, like closing your eyes, taking a couple of deep breaths, like get back into your body. And I want you to just envision, like, when have I felt the sexiest, the most desirable, the most connected to that sacral chakra, that creative, juicy, sensual, sexual energy? What does that look like for me? What does that look like for me? How does that feel in my body? So for me, when I just check in about that, moments I mentioned, dancing is a huge one for me. So when I check in, like, when do I feel really sensual, sexual? Just dancing to a song that just really like hits my soul, and I just feel this openness in my chest and just this heat going all the way from my pelvis all the way up to my lungs, and I just feel expansive. Then I just ask myself, if I were someone who felt this way frequently, what would I believe to be true about sex and sexuality? What would I believe to be true about sex? And from there, you'll start to feel the dissonance of, like, okay, this is what I would believe. And these are some of the ways that those little voices are coming up and saying, but what about that? But what about that? But what about that? Right? So just take note. What would I believe? So I would believe there was always enough time for my pleasure. I would believe that I always looked good, no matter what angle I was at, no matter how long it's been since I shaved my armpits, my legs. I would believe that every part of my body smelled and tasted delicious. I would believe that I was sexy. I looked good to myself and other people. I would believe that there's space for my pleasure, and that's just me. You will have your own beliefs come up. And what I would do, what I would take from this, is just, you can write it down on a piece of paper. All the beliefs that you would believe if you felt that frequently. You can do a couple different things. So one, you can start to notice when you're out of alignment with that, because what we've done is we've connected you to yourself, to your inner voice, to your inner knowing, to your heart, to your body, of when you feel sexy. And what you're going to start to notice when you compare these with some of the unconscious things that come up, it's a little bit different than some of the societal bullshit. And then when you notice the difference, you get to say, is that true? And who says, right? Like, oh, I haven't been shaved in a week, but I'm feeling like pretty sexy right now. Should I shave? I don't know. And then you kind of check in with your list that you made, check in with your authentic self, your authentic belief about what is sexy and what you believe about sex and sexuality. And shaving doesn't seem to be required on my list. Maybe it is. It's not for me, but maybe it's for you. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you just get to start to take notice. And there's a lot of different things that we can do to start restructuring how you're thinking and feeling about sex. And I want you to know, as you're starting to practice with this, sometimes some thoughts can feel really sticky. And if you're having trouble shifting them on your own, there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're bad at doing this work. It just means that sometimes we need a guide. Sometimes we need another person, oftentimes actually, to see our blind spots and to hold that vision and to hold space for us. And I really think that humans are social beings. I think that we need other people alongside us on the journey and alongside us on our healing path, not just to guide us, but to also just hold us in love and compassion and empathy. And I think that's why sex can become such a difficult thing to navigate, because we are so silent about it. It becomes this solo venture where, like, I have to heal this on my own. And if you think about that, like, no other part of your health and wellness would you tackle on your own. And like, if your back was hurting, right, you would go to the doctor or a physical therapist or a chiropractor or an acupuncturist, or all of them. And then you would talk to your friends, and then you would find that friend who also has a back that's hurting, and you'd say, oh my God, my back is really hurting today. And they'd say, oh, I tried this thing and this helped. And oh, I'm so sorry that that's happening. And I think that is the reason why I've really built my business the way I've built it, because I create groups for women to hold each other and hold themselves and their experiences. And I used to do only one-on-one work, and I would spend so much of my time saying, you're not the only one that feels this way. You're not the only one that feels this way. All my clients tell me this. And when I would ask people after my coaching, what was the most helpful part of it? 90% said that. Yeah. Like, none of my scientific biohacking about your physiology, none of my like healing your emotional wound, none of my retelling the stories of sex and intimacy, none of my relationship tips. It was literally knowing that you're not alone. And so when I started building group coaching programs, I started seeing results so much faster, like lightning speed. And I think it's truly because sex is this thing that we don't talk about with other people. And once we have other people in the room with us, even in a virtual room like Zoom, and we can say, okay, I'm not the only one who feels this way. Rose feels this way. 𝐒𝐜𝐡 feels this way. Rose overcame that. 𝐒𝐜𝐡 overcame that doing this. They're both doing different things. Their lives look differently, but I know it's possible. And I know I'm not the only one, and I'm in it together. And that is magic.
I love that. So powerful. So powerful. And it is so true. I love that you say, the thing that was most helpful is that knowing that there's someone else that has the same troubles as you. And that is why storytelling, you sharing your story and how you got to where you are is so important. Why we have to have these conversations so that people can know that they're not alone, that there's always someone to help them. And all they need to do is ask. That's the hardest part, is to ask. Once you ask, then you're taken care of.
Right. 100%.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I'm just having a look at the time, and I'm like, I don't want this to wrap up. I always get very sad towards the end of the conversation, because I always have to keep an eye on the time, and then I'm like, I want to keep talking.
We'll have a part 2 one day.
Yeah, definitely. But before we do wrap up, Rose, do you mind sharing with us what's something that's setting your soul on fire?
That's so beautiful. So I think my work is constantly reminding myself that it starts with my pleasure. And I'm not just talking from a sexual perspective. I'm talking about pleasure as a philosophy of how I live my life, and the way that I actually like create my schedule. So the first thing that I did this morning was I went rock climbing with my partner.
Mm.
and actually like started my workday at 1:30 p.m.
Why not?
Yeah. And it was, I was finding that, waiting until the end of the day to do the things that lit my soul on fire, like dancing, like rock climbing, like walking on the beach, like being in nature. I was so tired that it was like my half self was taking part in those activities. And so what's really lighting my soul on fire now is the way that I've restructured my days to prioritize pleasure every single day. And usually, I mean, there's a theme with my things that I enjoy. It's all about moving my body. And that just works for me. But, some people art, sometimes music, there's other ways to just like connect to that part of you. But what really lights you up and makes you feel joy, makes you feel that warm sensation of pleasure, and prioritizing at the start of the day. So that is what is lighting my fire lately.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful message to everyone as well, because we always forget to do things that light us up because there's always 10 million shoulds and to-dos. So that's such a beautiful message. I love that's what's lighting you on fire. And I hope everyone can take a leaf out of Dr. Rose's books to, really prioritize their pleasure, because it really is such a life-changing thing to do when you prioritize what lights you up. Rose, I'm so thank you for this conversation. It's just really, really enjoyed you chatting with you. And as I said, I'm very sad that we have to wrap this up. But before we go, can you share with us, if people want to find out more about you or how they can work with you, where should they go?
Absolutely. So I'm at Be Well with Rose on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. You can also go to my website, 𝐑𝐸wellwithrose.com. And if you're listening to this before the last week of January, I'm actually running an 8-week group coaching program. So if you resonated with anything that I said in this interview, if you feel like you love your partner, you're more connected when you two are more intimate, but it just feels like it's never the right time for sex, or it's always the last thing on your to-do list, or you find yourself kind of like trying to pep talk yourself into it or talk yourself into it, I want you to know you're not alone. But I also want you to know that there's really simple things that we can do to get you feeling energized, excited, and ease around intimacy so that you can spend your mornings laughing with your partner in the kitchen and giving each other that look that you haven't seen since you two started dating, or, just realizing that you're not sweating the small stuff as much because you finally feel like you're on the same page as one another. So if this is resonating with you, I invite you to join me for my 8-week group coaching program. And that you can find more information on at bewellwithrose.com/flame.
Awesome. I'll have all your details and the details for your group coaching program available in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you once again for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much, 𝐸𝐸. This was amazing. I so appreciate your time and energy.
Thank you. Bye.